All right, ready to dive deep into some seriously cool cell signaling? We're going to tackle the EGFR family
Oh,
today.
yeah, the EGFR family. Those proteins, man, they're like the VIPs of cancer biology.
Uh-huh, yeah, you got
Yeah.
that right. And, well, our listener wants to really get this, how these proteins do their thing, what makes them go rogue in cancer, and how we can hit them with, like, targeted drugs. They even gave us some seriously heavy research to dig through,
Wow, yeah, some hardcore articles and even a YouTube video. That's dedication.
for sure. So, no worries, listener. We got you. We're going to break it all down without getting lost in the jargon jungle.
Absolutely. Jargon-free zone here.
Awesome. So let's start with like EGFR 101, right? What exactly is this EGFR family? Why are they like the stars of the show?
Okay, so picture this. The EGFR family, sometimes called ERB, it's a crew of four, EGFR, HER2, HER3, and HER4. And they're what we call receptor tyrosine kinases. Big word, but basically they're like antennas on the cell surface, picking up signals from the outside world.
Okay, so they're like listening posts. Got it.
Yeah. Cellular messengers, taking orders and telling the cell, hey, grow, or divide, or even chill, time to die.
Whoa, life or death decisions. So the signals coming in, they're made of what?
We call them ligands. Imagine them like keys fitting into locks, and the receptors are those locks.
Okay, key and lock, that makes sense.
Yeah, so for the EGFR fam, some VIP ligands are like epidermal growth factor, that's EGF, and then there's these proteins called neuregulins.
Right, EGF, I've heard of that one. So when a ligand like clicks into its receptor, what happens?
No. Activation, the receptor flips on, and that sets off a whole chain reaction inside the cell, like a domino effect.
Domino effect. Okay, I can visualize that.
Yeah, it's a cascade of like proteins turning each other on or off.
Yeah.
And ultimately that leads to changes in like gene expression and the whole behavior of the cell.
Whoa, so it's like a whole chain of command from outside the cell to the nucleus, right?
Exactly.
And you said these signals, they mess with things like cell growth. How does that work?
So downstream of EGFR signaling, one of the key things that gets activated is these pathways called MAPK and PI3K. And these guys, they're like the control freaks of cell proliferation, survival, and differentiation.
Control freaks, good way to put it.
Yeah, they're the engines driving cell growth and division.
So if those pathways are like always on, that's not good, right?
Yeah.
Sounds like a recipe for cancer.
Bingo. Uncontrolled cell growth, that's the hallmark of cancer, right?
Yeah, for sure. And you mentioned mutations, those DNA changes.
Right. So you get a mutation in a gene that codes for an EGFR family member, and suddenly you've got a receptor that's hyperactive, always on, even without a ligand. It's like a car with the gas pedal stuck to the floor.
Oh, man, that's a scary thought.
Yeah, it can lead to out-of-control cell growth, hence cancer.
Okay, so that's where these targeted drugs come in, right?
Yeah.
The ones that are designed to, like, block these overactive receptors.
You got it. Scientists have been working hard on these drugs. They're like guided missiles going straight for the EGFR family members, inhibiting their activity and putting the brakes on those runaway cancer cells.
Okay, that's amazing. So it's like a high-stakes game of, like, molecular warfare.
It really is. But it's a game we're getting better at playing all the time.
That's good news. So in the YouTube video you gave us, it talked about these, like, signaling microdomains. Can you explain how those fit into the EGFR story?
Yeah, those are cool. So picture these little neighborhoods inside the cell, right? Each one is packed with specific signaling molecules, kind of like hubs for efficient signal transduction. Even though different EGFR family members might activate similar pathways, where exactly they get activated, like in which microdomain, that can change the outcome.
So it's like location, 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 like matters where the signal goes off.
Totally. It's like saying the same words, but in a different tone of voice. It changes the meaning.
Oh, that's a good analogy. So it's not just about blocking the receptor, but also like understanding where it's acting within the cell to really fine-tune those therapies, right?
Absolutely. And that's where the real challenge and the real excitement lie.
This is already blowing my mind. And we're just getting started, right?
Yeah, just scratching the surface.
Can't wait to dive even deeper.
You know, speaking of location and all that, those kinase anchoring proteins, the AKPs, remember those? They're kind of like the traffic cops of these signaling pathways.
Oh, yeah, AKPs, the YouTube video mentioned them, and I'm still kind of hazy on how they, like, fit into the whole EGFR picture.
Okay, think of AK, like, well, they're organizers, right? Bringing specific enzymes and signaling molecules together, close proximity. Super efficient signaling hubs. It's like having a well-organized workspace, you know? Everything you need right there.
Yeah, that makes sense. So instead of those molecules just floating around randomly.
Exactly. AKPs bring order to the chaos. And that's super important for pathways like the cyclic AMP pathway. It's involved in a ton of cellular stuff.
Right, the video focused on cyclic AMP, but you're thinking AKPs might be important for EGFR signaling too.
There are hints, yeah. Some studies show AKPs getting cozy with EGFR and its downstream crew, maybe controlling how strong and long-lasting those signals are.
So like fine-tuning the message.
You got it.
Hmm.
And just like a good conductor can make an orchestra sound amazing, these AKPs, they're essential for keeping the cellular symphony in tune.
Love that analogy. Okay, so I also wanted to go back to those thyroid hormone receptors for a sec, the ones that can be both activators and silencers. That was kind of mind-blowing.
Yeah, that dual nature, it's pretty wild, right? Nature loves its checks and balances.
Right, and you said it's kind of similar to how EGFR family members can, like, promote or inhibit cell growth, depending on the situation.
It's not a simple on-off switch, that's for sure. It's more like a dimmer switch,
Right.
controlling the intensity. And that's what makes targeting these pathways so tricky.
Yeah, I can imagine. It's like trying to hit a moving target.
Totally. We need to understand not just the players, but the whole context. Like understanding a conversation. Same words, different tone of voice, totally different meaning, right?
Right. And speaking of context, that YouTube video mentioned how a receptor's location within a cell matters. Like it influences the effects. Are there like specific examples of that with the EGFR family?
Oh, tons. Think about receptor endocytosis. Activated receptors, they get pulled inside the cell.
Pulled inside. Okay, and then what?
Well, they either get recycled back to the surface or they get broken down, degraded.
So the receptor's fate, recycled or trashed, that changes how long the signal lasts.
You got it. And where that receptor ends up inside the cell, that plays a big role in deciding its fate.
So it's not just blocking the receptor. It's about like understanding its whole journey, where it goes, what happens to it after it's activated.
It's a whole soap opera in there.
I
And
get
yeah, it means we need therapies that can target not just the receptor, but all that trafficking and degradation stuff too.
Okay, got to keep up with the drama. Now, something from the research article really caught my eye. Thyroid hormone, right? It's crucial for tadpoles turning into frogs. Metamorphosis.
Ah, metamorphosis.
Oh.
It's like nature's ultimate makeover show, right?
Uh-huh, yeah. And thyroid hormone is the stylist, right?
It's the director telling different tissues to remodel, specialize. Like the tadpole's tail, it gets reabsorbed, limb sprout, the whole digestive system, it shifts gears to handle a meaty diet.
That's wild. Just one hormone orchestrating this whole transformation.
Yeah, it's mind-blowing. And even small hiccups in thyroid hormone levels, they can mess with the timing and the whole metamorphosis process.
I was reading that if thyroid hormone is too low, the tadpole might just stay a tadpole forever. No froggy future.
Yeah, and too much thyroid hormone. Metamorphosis goes into overdrive, you get developmental weirdness. It's all about balance, you see.
Balance. That's becoming a recurring theme here, isn't it? Gene activation versus repression, receptor recycling versus degradation, hormone levels, keeping everything in equilibrium, that's key.
You're getting it. When that balance gets messed up, whether it's mutations, environmental toxins, whatever, that's when things go wrong. Disease happens.
Which brings us back to those endocrine disruptors.
Yeah.
Those sneaky chemicals that mimic or block hormones.
Right. They're like imposters,
Yeah.
messing with all sorts of hormonal systems, including the thyroid hormone system. And that's bad news, especially during like fetal development or early childhood, those crucial periods.
So like exposure to these chemicals could mess with metamorphosis in tadpoles, but also like brain development in humans. That's scary.
It's a big concern. Scientists are trying to figure out the full impact, but it's tough. These chemicals, they're everywhere, low doses, but for a long time. Hard to study.
Yeah, that's unsettling. It's like this silent threat.
It's a wake-up call,
Right.
Got to be more aware of what's in the products we use.
Okay, so what can we do? How do we protect ourselves?
Look for labels. BPA-free, phthalate-free, go organic when you can. Ditch the plastic, especially for food. And support groups fighting for stricter regulations.
It's about being informed and making smart choices.
Exactly. Taking charge of our health.
This has been eye-opening, but I gotta admit, I'm feeling a bit overwhelmed too. It's like peeling an onion and every layer just gets more complex.
It's true, but complexity can be beautiful, right? It's a testament to how amazing nature is, how intricate our bodies are.
And thank goodness for brilliant minds like yours working to untangle it all.
Uh-huh. Well, we're all in this together, You, me, everyone listening. Staying curious, asking questions, that's how we move forward.
You know, this whole metamorphosis thing, the endocrine disruptors, it makes me think about regeneration. Like, if thyroid hormone can make such drastic changes in tadpoles, could we, like, harness that to regenerate tissues in humans?
That's a great question. We're not quite at the regrowing limbs stage yet, but regenerative medicine is making huge strides.
So it's like we're taking inspiration from nature, seeing how other creatures regenerate and trying to apply that to ourselves.
Exactly. Nature is a master engineer. By studying how other species do it, we can learn a lot about promoting healing and repair in our own bodies.
That's awesome. Unlocking our own hidden healing powers.
It really is. It's like a whole new frontier in medicine. Look at stem cells, right? People are exploring them to regenerate damaged heart tissue after a heart attack, or even repair spinal cord injuries.
That's like science fiction come to life.
It is. And yeah, there are still hurdles, but the potential is huge.
Okay, so before we wrap up this deep dive, let's circle back to the EGFR family one last time. We talked a lot about the receptors, but what about those downstream effectors, the molecules that actually get the job done?
Good point. Those downstream effectors, they're the real action heroes, translating the receptor's message into actual cellular changes.
So for the EGFR family, who are some of those key players and what do they do?
Well, we talked about MAPK and PI3K. They're all about cell growth and survival, but there are others, like PLC gamma, for example. It splits this membrane lipid called PIP2 into two signaling molecules, DAG and IP3.
Okay, and then what? What do those molecules do? I'm picturing this whole cascade of events.
You got it. DAA activates protein kinase C, PKC for short. It goes on to phosphorylate other proteins, leading to changes in gene expression and cell behavior. IP3, on the other hand, it binds to receptors on the endoplasmic reticulum, triggering the release of calcium ions into the cytoplasm.
Calcium ions. Why is calcium such a big deal in cell signaling?
Calcium, it's like the multi-tool of signaling, a second messenger in a ton of cellular processes. When it gets released into the cytoplasm, it sets off a chain reaction, enzymes getting activated, transcription factors switching on.
So calcium is like the conductor of the orchestra, making sure everyone hits their cues at the right time.
That's a great way to put it. And the cell keeps tight control over calcium levels. Special pumps and channels manage its flow.
It's like a carefully choreographed dance.
It is, and just like in a dance, timing is key. Too soon, too late, it all messes up the routine.
This is all mind-blowing. I feel like we've barely scratched the surface of this whole cell signaling world.
It's a vast and amazing world, always something new to learn.
Well, I'm ready for more. What's next on our deep dive agenda?
Next up, we're going to dig into the central nervous system, see how thyroid hormone shapes the brain, and explore how we might harness these pathways for good.
Okay, so here we are, the final stretch of our EGFR deep dive. We've covered a ton, like how these receptors work, how mutations can throw a wrench in the works, leading to cancer, and how scientists are coming up with some pretty awesome targeted therapies.
Yeah, we've been through a lot, but there's still so much to uncover.
Yeah.
And for this last part, I want to shift gears a bit. Let's zoom in on the central nervous system, see how thyroid hormone shapes the brain. It's a fascinating story.
Okay, yeah. The research paper did mention that thyroid hormone is, super important for brain development.
It's crucial. Think of thyroid hormone as the master architect of the brain, right? During those critical times, fetal development, early childhood, it's calling the shots, telling neurons to multiply, to move where they need to be, to become specialized. And it's even involved in forming synapses, those connections between brain cells.
Wow, so it's not just about the brain growing bigger, it's about all the intricate wiring going on in there too.
You got it. And if there's not enough thyroid hormone during those key windows of development, it can have some serious consequences. Cognitive function, motor skills, emotional regulation, the whole 9 yards.
That's why they screen newborns for thyroid hormone deficiencies, right? So they can catch it early.
Exactly. Early detection and treatment, that's key. It can make a world of difference in preventing long-term neurological issues.
It's kind of crazy how something that seems so simple, like a hormone deficiency, can have such a huge impact.
It really shows how interconnected everything is,
Yeah.
how these delicate hormonal systems can have ripple effects throughout the body.
Now, those NTREs we talked about earlier, the negative thyroid hormone response elements, those gene activity breaks, do they play a role in the brain too?
Oh yeah, absolutely. They're all over the brain. Scientists think they're fine-tuning the response to thyroid hormone. Too much signaling, not enough. NTREs help keep things in check.
So it's all about maintaining that balance, right? Like we were talking about before.
Always about balance. And researchers are still working out all the details, how NTREs interact with other regulatory elements, how they contribute to the complex symphony of brain development.
Wow, it's amazing to think about all that happening in our brains all the time. Now, you mentioned earlier how environmental factors can sometimes mess with hormonal signaling. Are there any specific examples of that happening with, like, thyroid hormone and brain development?
Yeah, sadly there are. And there's growing concern about these endocrine disrupting chemicals, EDCs. They can act like thyroid hormone imposters, mimicking or blocking it, messing with its normal function.
And these EDCs, they're in, like, everyday stuff, right?
Right. They're everywhere. Plastics, pesticides, personal care products, even some food packaging. And we're often exposed to low levels over a long time. That makes it hard to study the long-term effects.
Yeah, it's unsettling. You don't even realize it could be happening. Are there specific EDCs that are known to mess with thyroid hormone?
There are a few. One example is bisphenol A, or BPA. It's in a lot of plastics, and it can leach into food and drinks. Studies show it can bind to thyroid hormone receptors, potentially interfering with thyroid hormone doing its job.
So even something like a plastic water bottle could be a risk.
It's a good reminder to be aware of the products we use. Look for BPA-free options. Choose glass or stainless steel containers for food. Just be mindful of potential EDC sources.
It's a lot to think about,
Mm,
but it's definitely important to be informed.
Absolutely. Knowledge is power. The more we understand, the better we can protect ourselves.
You know, this whole conversation has really opened my eyes. I've learned so much about cell signaling, the importance of balance, and how we can make choices to protect our health. It's been fascinating.
I'm glad to hear that. But remember, this is just the tip of the iceberg. The world of science is full of mysteries waiting to be solved. Keep asking questions, keep exploring, and who knows what amazing things we'll discover together.
I'm excited for the journey. Thanks for guiding us through this deep dive. It's been a wild ride. And at everyone listening, thanks for joining us. Until next time, stay curious.